Hey, don't give me that JAK podcast.
With Jim,
Aaron,
and you got to start over. We just started.
My friend's on this bus, and he's going home. He just went shopping. He's about to get off the back doors of the bus, right? They're going to open up, and he's got a bag of apples. And as the doors open up, the bag of apples opens up, and the apples are all over the bus floor. And he's like, he's not a bad guy, so he's looking around, and he's like, well, I definitely don't want these apples anymore. This is my stop. I'm getting off. The doors are open.
Oh, wow.
Do I just get off the bus as if I've thrown apples everywhere? This is the guy's just gonna be like, "What the fuck was that? Do I run away from the bus?" Like, and he just got off, dude. He just stepped off into
Dope.
the freedom.
That's pretty funny.
that is freedom right there. Like he might be a modern day Johnny Appleseed. Just
Oh, there we go.
throwing apple seeds out there.
I like that. Also, like feed the homeless or something. A lot of homeless living in buses.
That reminds me of something I'm learning
true,
about
actually.
right now.
That's a fact.
So there's this philosopher named Cuneo or Cuneo. I don't know. I'm going to say Cuneo. I'm not sure if that's how you actually pronounce it, but it's spelled Cuneo. CU Neo. And
cool.
anyways, he's got this like funny little argument for moral realism that's like basically because speech acts are possible, moral realism is true. I mean, it's way more complicated than that, but like that, I just phrase it like that just to show you like how weird an argument it is, like because you can do a speech act. And anyways, the Apple story reminded me of it because there's this there's this term called a locutionary act, and then an illocutionary act. So the locutionary act is like just saying something, but the illocutionary act is like what is meant by it. So like for example, you can be on a microphone and you can say Ella Fitzgerald saying Mac the Knife. You could be doing that to just check the mic. So the illocutionary act there is just checking the mic. Like you're not saying anything, you're not asserting any fact. Or you could be like speaking into the mic trying to tell someone that. And then the illocutionary act is like you're teaching, you're asserting. And anyway, so the apples, the illocutionary act of the apples um, in that situation, like, is it to feed the homeless? Probably not. Is it to assert your freedom? Probably not.
No,
It
that
probably
brings
is
up a
really
really
just
good
the guy was
point
lazy.
because you know he stole my girlfriend later. So if we do the odds, it was probably an evil act on his part.
Wait, what? He
Yeah,
stole your
probably.
girlfriend later?
Yeah, that's not important. The apples are important.
Wow, this guy might really be into freedom, like so much freedom. He doesn't respect his friends' boundaries.
Yeah, it puts this Apple story in a whole new light. I gotta tell my therapist about this. We finally cracked the Apple story. She says I'm really deflecting, but I solved it.
Yeah, we got it. We figured it out.
Welcome to the Jack Podcast. I'm the
Oh.
A.
And I'm the J.
And I'm the K.
So we're Adjik today, or no? Yes,
Yeah,
Adjika podcast.
I was gonna pitch you guys, like trying to be all serious and be like, I think that JAK is unrelatable. It's not a real word. It doesn't sound like anything. We should be the AKJ podcast, the AKJ podcast.
Right. Yeah. I
So
was
wanna
thinking
go
maybe
first.
we could pronounce J as an S.
No,
Ask.
you could do it as a H, like Spanish.
Yeah, the
JAK
Hack podcast.
All right, dope. Well, today we have the usual guests, as you know, Kevin, Aaron, and myself, Jim, and we're continuing our anime as gendered fantasy, and this week we're looking at the very well known, famous though not the biggest, but definitely famous, Fruits Basket, which is
Fruit
a
basket.
shoujo anime, uh, which I will read a definition of, so people people can follow along. Um, Shoujo manga, other words known as girls comic, um, category of Japanese comics targeting an audience of adolescent females and young adult women. It is a long shonen manga, uh, so that's like the majority of manga. So what's interesting here is, oh wait, shonen.
I think that means fight.
And are all the other animes shonen animes? Like Naruto's a shonen. Naruto's a shonen anime, right? Okay, yes, yeah. What's interesting is the 90% of the animes really are shonen animes, and then like there's a weird 3% which are shojo,
Hmm.
which just goes to show that anime is highly targeted towards men. Um,
A resident expert chiming in.
yes, I've watched a good amount of anime. I'm not a total weeb. But anyway, so the specific shojo anime in question today, um, is called Fruits Basket, and it is just as a basic premise, and then we can go into details. Is a story of a girl named Toru Honda, an orphan girl, who meets these two hotties, and actually gets kind of adopted into this family um,
Hotties.
of hotties, essentially, yeah. And it's
Zodiac hotties.
yes, they're all zodiacs, and then we can kind of go into, and by zodiacs means they are possessed with the spirits of the zodiac, the Chinese zodiac, and the show. I'll just give the intro of the show. The show opens up with this myth or this folk tale about how when the zodiacs first kind of conformed to create the months of the year or whatever it is, everyone showed up, and there was actually a cat who uh, was told the wrong time of the meeting to show up for the zodiac meeting, and so legend has it that the 12 zodiacs have an extra 13th, who is kind of ostracized, and that is the cat zodiac, and the mouse tricked the cat by telling the wrong time. So they're it's like Tom and Jerry, right? Um, they're mortal enemies, and the two boys she meets are the cat and the mouse. And how do you guys want to start this? We could start with like what you noticed about the girl, what you noticed about the boy, the myth, anywhere you want to go. Any ideas?
Well,
What
maybe
interested you? Yeah.
we could maybe contrast it with how different it was
Okay, I got this.
from the
Um,
isekai. Like the isekai main character is like um it well, they both seem kind of like caricatures in a way.
oh
Like
yeah, so weird.
um sort of extremes of personality traits that you might say are like young men or a young girl or something. And we talked about his character traits in the last cast, and I think for her, at least what I got from her was like a lot of really trying to not be a burden on other people, really trying to take care of people. Um, you mentioned she was an orphan, and the thing that she talked about a few times was she felt like she wasn't a good daughter to her mom before she died. Like she should
Hmm.
have been more caring that day before she left was something she talked about. Um, so it's kind of interesting how one of her personality traits is this like intense care for things. And with that being said, it's really fascinating that like then animals are kind of the foil of this show versus like,
Oh,
in the isekai when
Gods. Yeah.
you've got this yeah, animal
oh,
gods.
you're right. Because she's also when she moves in with these guys, because her homeless person tent got buried under a landslide that she almost died in. Let's just slip past that. Um, they need to be taken care of. They're messy boys. You know, the
Yeah.
kitchen's destroyed, and she's not thinking like, oh, these boys are assholes. Like, I'm sure everybody in real life, you know, struggles with the dishes being blamed on everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Like this, everyone's in this internal dishes squabble. There should just be a TV drama show about who should do the dishes. That'd be way more relatable. But this chick just comes in. She wants to be of service. She can't imagine not paying her way or being in the way. Like, oh, you don't want me here. You're just saying, stay here. And they're so cool about it. They're like, nah, dog, it's chill. And they go like walk away, flick a coin into the distance or some shit, like be a cool guy, flick away a toothpick or something. Like they always make a dramatic exit. Like, nah, it's chill. You can stay here forever. Throw like put a leaf on her forehead and then walk away. Like in one of the scenes, he goes, "You look under the weather. You should really take care of your health."
She
To me,
swoons.
that's a
Yeah.
fucking insult. I literally have a Korean girl at work who I've tried to explain to like 4 times. When you tell me I look tired, I don't feel like you're caring about me. I feel like you're doing the opposite. It's not
Yeah,
helping me.
it's interesting you bring that up because there was a scene kind of similar to that in the anime that I actually kind of like. Um, at one point, one of the hotties, the rat hottie, was like, she's incredible for like whatever she's
Oh
done.
yeah,
She's
admiring
incredible.
her. No, no, this is what he said. This was one of my points. She comes to school with a smile on and looks like nothing's bothering her, even
Mhm.
though internally she's struggling with the deepest pain. She's so amazing. Wow, that's strength. I'm like, hey, unhealthy Japanese culture of suppressing your emotions to do work. Please stop. Please, what is this? Is it not just Japanese people? Do a lot of people think they have to go through pain in order to gain? I understand that's like can be true, but not as a blanket statement. Don't just do
Yeah.
things that hurt and then expect something out of it or God hates you. Like this is
Yes.
not what is going on.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. And I like that the other guy was like, when you say that, you insult her, right? I thought that
Oh,
was
he
cool.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
the
did.
the
Yeah.
uh, the other hottie. I can't remember his animal. Oh,
Oh,
I
the
remember now.
angry.
The
Yeah, the angry
creepy
one.
cousin. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or I think it was the older cousin, the
The older
dog.
brother. I think of him as an older brother, dude.
He's
He's
essentially that.
wise.
But
He's not
Yeah,
falling
yeah,
into these childish dramas,
no,
and like
unfortunately, I've watched a good amount of the show. The guy's kind of a piece of shit, which is
okay,
something. Unfortunately, you won't watch enough of it to know. Um, the whole family is actually really dysfunctional, and the show takes a lot of random, almost random, super dark turns,
that
which is
seems
interesting.
like a
Something we can
drama.
talk about. But
Yeah.
before we go too far, let's get a good idea of like because you mentioned what's Honda or Toru Honda.
Well, let's go. Let's just
She's a
use that for
car. She's a Japanese car, and very reliable. Let's just. I'm going to paint some details. So Honda's a early high school girl. Her dad died when she was young, and she has a mother who never graduated high school, and who was part of a biker gang, but kind of reforms her life and becomes a mother, and is a very loving mother. But because she doesn't have a degree or anything, she has to work a lot, and this makes Honda, the Japanese car, have to make dinner for her mom every day, and becomes this very loving, sweet, self-sacrificial girl who's kind of raised in that scenario. And the mom's kind of this carefree, lighthearted woman. And
Is that
then,
what happened in this show?
yeah, well, it doesn't happen in the show. It just gets summarized. And as the show progresses, which I've
Okay.
watched a good chunk of now, they explain how the mom was, and she's like
Okay.
the
Okay.
pinnacle of
Now
motherhood,
that makes
essentially.
sense.
Um, so yeah, and so now Honda lives by herself, right? This is one of the most telltale things. You guys kind of mentioned it. She lives by herself in a tent. She's abandoned by her family, essentially.
She said.
So she,
She said, "Now this is a good opportunity for me to try out the harsh life." Like she's
yes,
seeing it as a valuable experience.
yeah, and so yeah, that's like a huge ethos of her, right? And she's got this external family, extended family, who's basically like, hey, we can take care of you, but we're getting this house remodeled, and I have to live with my other family, and you could come too. And this is like a grandpa, and this girl's like in early high school, and he's kind of like, well, look, it's going to be really cramped though. So do you think you could stay with someone else?
Right.
And so she thinks, no, I don't want to trouble my close friends for whatever reason. I'm
She
going to live in a
I remember
tent,
the line though. He said it would be better for you if you stayed with some friends. And she
right?
was like, "I'll live in the forest
Right.
as a tween."
Yeah, so a strange kind of premise, all things considered. Sure, it might be a commentary. There's a lot of weird, definitely Japanese culture stuff going on. And big takeaways for Honda as a character is dead parents, totally self sufficient, bears huge loads of living without any questions, right? She actually thinks it's good, super curious, all like super loving, apologetic, kind, never is depressed or discouraged. Um, and so that's would you guys agree? Is that a good kind of depiction of the perfect feminine as it's kind of presented in this?
Yeah, somehow
Yeah.
like listen, if you're suffering on the inside, don't smile, okay? Don't do that.
Well, the thing is, it's not clear to me that she. I've watched a good chunk of the show. She doesn't really have many breakdown moments, like at all. In fact, she's always only breaking down for others and feeling their pain. And so, like
Yes.
you were kind of saying, she's this with the, oh, these boys don't know how to take care of their home. How this feminine ideal protagonist is portrayed is, these zodiac gods who has something mysterious about them, can't handle the domestic sphere at all. And that, but she can. Like, she's the goddess of the domestic.
She can be
So
useful.
yeah, she's useful in everything material, right? Taking care of things, also as it turns out, relating to people and seeing their pain and telling them it's okay to feel pain, um, which is I think which is kind of the biggest arc of this. It's kind of her main function, um, like the other character, whatever Bell, I think it was. He doesn't. They don't really have a character, you know. They're so they're so much of a caricature of
Yeah.
these ideal traits that they sort of just become a, empty to some degree, and they have to be filled by either. In the other show, they're very weird, I love this girl actions, and in this one, it's kind of I love these boys actions, right? So they're always defined by other characters and how they relate to them. Um, And unfortunately, did you guys have any opinions about the? Um, well, maybe we should introduce the three other men. One of them is barely introduced, unfortunately. Um, but we have Yuki, who's the rat boy, mouse boy. Um,
He's the very pretty prince of the school whose handsome features have earned him prince of the school. And she even offers, like she in her head she's like, should I not walk to school with that guy anymore because all these other girls are jealous? Like that's some serving shit, you know what I mean? Like she's like, I'll do
Yeah.
whatever. I'll do whatever they say. Anybody
Yeah.
says.
And
I
Yuki
don't want
also
to be a
seems to
burden.
be Yuki also seems to be like incredibly like thoughtful versus a lot of the other men or other boys.
He said almost nothing. And she
Yeah.
was like, he's so mysterious. I'm interested in finding out the answer behind that. This has to be a young person thing because once you've found out the thing that's been interesting you in a celebrity, in a person, you go, oh, what a letdown. I tricked myself. I see. You know what I mean? Like, there's no mystery when you see that their kitchen is garbage. You go, oh, they don't deserve these god powers. They were like accidental. These they didn't earn shit.
well, I think the I think you're right, but she wants to be poised as she automatically it kind of sees through that to some degree. At least that's how she's positioned, right? She gets access to the interiority of these men's lives and sees the ugliness and still likes them. I mean, Kevin,
But
to your
why
point, or
does
maybe
mystery attract women,
that's
even as a trope?
yeah, it's mystery, and in this show at least, it's explicitly and to the point of a bit um, to the point where it's a bit nauseating as a man, right? Because I'm now the fantastic object, and I've been trying to tell this to Anna, who I've been watching
Oh,
it
like
with. That like
you're
she
saying
feels
he's
weird when
handsome.
she's in these harem animes because women are just used as objects, and in this men are used as objects. But interestingly, their kind of objectified part is this intense interiority of pain. So it's a weird balancing, right? Because these men have characters, but at the same time,
They
it,
need
it's
women as their character. They need help if their
yes,
one characteristic on the
yes,
inside.
exactly. Yeah, the
And
woman
they
is the
admire
only
that she
way.
can not be acting out all the time and showing her emotion.
Yeah, so it's kind of peculiar. It's a weird flip. It just on a baseline, I will say that Fruits Basket shoujo mangas. This is a good example of one. Um, like a lot of people read this. Anna and all her friends read it when they were kids. You know what I mean? When they were in high school and stuff. So it's kind of a widespread thing. But it's on the whole, it's a lot better. Like just as a bare narrative, it's not just tits in your face constantly. Like there's something here. There's narrative here. It's a bit oversaturated. Um, but what was I going to say? Something about the boys.
Yeah,
Um,
you were introducing all the characters. So
right.
we talked about Yuki a bit, and then there are two more, I think.
Yeah.
The
So then
angry
there's
boy.
the wolf boy. Yeah, Yuki is just he's sensitive. Notice he always holds himself. He's always holding himself, which is an interesting thing. He's the sensitive boy. Also, something to note is what you said earlier is, and this has to do with some of the feminine fantasy. It's is of social life. So all the other girls at the school, except for her two friends, hate Yuki because she has access to this boy who no one else has access to, right? And Yuki doesn't even try, or not Yuki, sorry, Honda. Honda doesn't even try to have this access. It's just she's just kind of naively perfect, and he falls in love with her.
Oh, it is.
And then all these girls hate her, right? So that's also the like naturally perfect. All other women are jealous of you because you have this special relationship with the pinnacle of value, whatever prince boy. Um, so yeah, Yuki is a soft boy, reflective, but also deeply pained. Um, and then we had the wolf boy who the
Wolf
wolf
boy.
man. Um,
Is it the older brother guy?
it's the older brother guy, and he's kind of he's a bit sleazy. Uh, they don't really paint that too clearly in this episode. He makes like one kind of comment and gets punished for it. Later on, he's pretty pervy. Um, not in a boy way. I mean, not in the sense that it's like him spying on her explicitly, and you get like a tit scene of him spying on someone, which is what you would run into in any other anime, frankly. Um,
Really?
but he talks about doing that. So he's kind of a pig.
The
Um,
girl version is we don't show the voyeurism footage
but you do
of
mention
some
it.
girl pooping.
Yeah.
We do mention that I had to remove the cameras from the bathroom when the girl moved in or whatever.
I do want to talk eventually. I want to talk about how unfortunately it doesn't come up too much in the first episode, but the way sexuality is eroticism is actually implied is really interesting. Aaron, you might have noticed it because you watched the second episode. But yeah, there's not much to say. Am I missing anything? He's kind of clever. He's a writer. He's lazy. He kind of has this mastermind esque thing about him. Um, he's very cool and collected, aloof, doesn't care. Um, but yeah, and anything I'm missing?
About him? I don't think so.
Wolf Boy, yeah.
You know what I just realized?
Yeah, what's
The
that?
the kind of like positioning of characters in this story reminds me a little bit of a combination of like um, Twilight and Mean Girls,
Oh wow,
except like
that really hits right.
the Wolf Boy isn't necessarily, at least I don't know,
This
isn't
is
like
exactly
in love with
Twilight
Honda.
stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it's Twilight and Mean Girls, and I wonder if like Mean Girls or Twilight um, had any knowledge of this show, because
They
there is
had
a
to.
little bit of a history of like American media
Dude,
kind of
Twilight,
stealing some
I'm
tropes from
literally
Japan.
remembering it, and they just go in and they're in the cafeteria of the school, and then the rest of the movie doesn't take place within the school very often. And so, what does that social relationship have to do? And she's whatever the fuck Bella's. She's like, she just shows up and he likes her just like this. She stole it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. Sort of.
She stole episode one. She didn't even steal like the good parts, probably.
I wonder how much of it is just a um,
Universal trope.
less well universal, but moreover just like the way in which patriarchal systems set up women's sets of value, right? How do you navigate both being desirable and pure? Um, you kind of just have to be it, right? There's no actual. You're not really allowed explicit autonomy in patriarchal systems for women, right? That's unattractive. Uh, uh, and you have to have purity. I'm butchering this kind of analysis, but I think the way in which women are set up, and I don't want to take away people's autonomy, but um, it does seem like these are kind of the natural values that you would be left with. This is the only way you could be perfect.
Yeah, this reminds me of so there's this I guess he is an evolutionary anthropologist named Manveer Singh, and he studies shamans specifically. This is that I think I shared this podcast with both of you, but it's this podcast called Decoding the Gurus, and they did an episode with Manveer Singh recently, and he was talking about um, well, two thoughts that relate to this. One is there's this book that came out recently. I can't remember the title, but basically the book is arguing that humans are incredibly flexible. So this idea that like civilization went from hunter gatherer to farmers to kingdoms to large states as like a progression that always happens over and over again naturally, they're sort of dispelling that myth. What Manveer Singh talks about is he says that we need to be careful not to replace it with the other myth of like radical human freedom regardless of the environment, because two things pop up pretty frequently. Whenever there's low resources in an environment, we see that humans are very egalitarian. There aren't hierarchies that pop up like they do in other societies. So, like things like age, gender, they don't have the same kind of status. And oftentimes, like people who are successful hunters, when they come back and they brag about their hunt, they're actually taught lessons of humility. Like people will say, like, "Oh yeah, that's a pretty skinny giraffe there, bud," you know. And the lesson is
Interesting.
like be humble. So in low resource environments, humans are incredibly egalitarian. But in high resource environments, what happens is the humans get more sedentary and hierarchies pop up. And you were talking about the way that they sort of function in society in the show, like in the high school or something. And I just realized it's like a pretty affluent society that's going on there. And
Hmm.
seems like the gender roles are being cashed out kind of starkly. And I was just reminded of that. Like maybe it's a thing of affluence that pops up. And then the other thing I was thinking about was this idea of Member talks about with shamans, where shamans have some way that they demonstrate their otherness, that they're not human, to make their claims about healing and spirituality more plausible. And these boys in the show are inherently other, right? Like they're gods. They're a rat
Right.
god and a wolf god. And she's also kind of inherently other too, because she went through this like big tragedy that kind of transformed who she is. And she is radically caring and loving, sort of radically feminine, I guess. And you put it well earlier, Jim, when you said she's the goddess of the material or the domestic.
Hmm.
And it's interesting how in this show, unlike the shamans, they're all sort of trying to hide how they are other. Like
Interesting. Yeah.
they're she doesn't want to like she's clearly special, and that's why Yuki has fallen in love with her, and yet she does not want to bring attention to anything special about Yuki or herself or their relationship in front of other people because of how bad it might make them feel or how upset it might make them.
Right.
It's
Yeah, it's
like
interesting.
anti-shaman, sort of like anti-guru.
And I think it speaks to, well, I guess it could go in two ways, right? It's the ideal, right? Well, I guess with Honda, the car, she might not even know she's special, and so it's that kind of you know, women are jealous of her because these boys like her, and that's what designates her as special. Otherwise, she's just a boring girl, and in all ways, she pretty much is. She doesn't have much of a character, but I think you're right that she's unaware of it, where these boys really want to hide it, and that might speak to um, um, something maybe more common today, just that you want to hide your specialness because one, that's the right thing to do, and in this case at least, that specialness is directly connected with trauma. As it is shown in the show later on, I think I'm 27 episodes in. We're early into season 2, and the family that they belong to is one very affluent. To your point, Kevin, like they are a massive family. They own like multiple estates. Everyone in the family lives on the estates because they have to keep this secret of being animals, which we haven't really gotten to yet, which I think would be interesting. And The family is ruled by some weird patriarchal zodiac dude who I think is the dragon. I don't know who he is yet, but we've run out of zodiacs. And the guy is a weird, very extremely abusive dude. And what's curious about the show, and I'll stop here. Maybe we can move to the animal part. Two things is one, the strange amount of brutality that the show even introduces in the first episode. An example, when the mom says she dies, when Honda says her mom died, it isn't like a reference to a car crash. It isn't showing a neutral car crash scene of a broken car. They have a sound effect, and then they have a fuck ton of blood pouring into a sewer. And it's like, what the fuck happened? Where like was she squished next
He
to a sewer?
exploded, bro.
Yeah.
That airbag.
And it comes out
That
of
airbag
nowhere,
was
and the show
huge.
continues to do that throughout, where you're, because it's kind of a cute narrative. You're like, oh, it's a cute
Mystery.
girl. Yeah, it's brutality. A lot of the boys, Yuki for example, he's revealed to be severely abused and locked in a room for like years.
What?
Yeah, just like,
The fuck?
whoa, why did you need to do this?
Yeah, he doesn't even have any traits from that, it looks like, in episode one.
He kind of does. He's very nervous. He's very controlled. And a lot of the other characters have traumas, and it's all related to being zodiacs, right? Because their
Um,
powers, uh, they other
were
them.
they bored
They're
with
kind
it?
of shamans. And maybe if you guys want to, oh, one more thing about the family, as long as we're on it. Notice how, and unfortunately, Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in the Dungeon didn't really emphasize this too much like other isekais, but notice the way in which family is positioned in that show versus this show. So in Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, family is this weird incestuous setup with a goddess, and it's vaguely implied that you have to watch the show to know this, but Belle's grandfather, is Zeus, but there's no personal connection. There's no actual family structure. And what occurs in a lot of these isekais is that the dudes don't have any connection to their family. Their family sucks and they want to be away from them. Family is never mentioned, and they just escape into this video game world,
Mm.
right? It's very different to shoujo. And I've watched a number of these shoujos, K dramas, sort of more feminine fantasy esque stuff. Family is usually a huge, crucial either element that forms her character or something that structures a narrative in itself. So Yuki is who she is because of her mother in a very positive way, right? And Yuki gets introduced to another family and sort of becomes the mother of the family, essentially. Um, so I just think that's interesting. Like it says something about how maybe these gendered fantasies play out. Men don't like being tied down to the domestic. We want to escape from it, right? We want to be a free, perfect boy who doesn't have domestic
Women
troubles.
want to be perfect within the system.
Well, what I find kind of charming about the feminine fantasy, frankly, is that it's finding perfection within imperfection, and it gets a little gross in the show. It does it because Yuki is perfect and she kind of heals everyone just by accepting people's pain. But it
You
is this
Hondo.
nice contrast where boys totally neglect the reality of family, where these girl fantasies are like, no, I suffer and I am who I am because of my family, and I belong to it, and I own up to it, and I heal others through it. And so this, I like it. I like it better than the weird disembodied. I I am the progenitor of babies and awesomeness that the
Oh
man.
no! In the isekai, his family is 3 hot girls that want to fuck him that he ignores. That he's like, I don't know who you are. I gotta go after this other girl. Like
Right.
what?
Yeah.
Shut up, virgin.
Um, yeah, we don't have to get into incest fantasy yet, but it's
I
there.
mean, it's
Uh,
just implied. I mean, I've never
so
had a
the
sister.
and it shows up in this a little bit. Um, maybe I would have to think about that.
Oh yeah, it does. You ready for this? Sorry. She is very excited to serve 3 men, and you don't. It's unclear which of the 3 men, the cat guy, the wolf guy, or the rat guy, that she's going to end up liking a lot more, right? And so she's just sitting there trying to be of help, trying not to be a burden. And all I'm thinking is, look at this variety of men. The cat guy's angry. Maybe she can fix him, right?
Mhm.
Yuki's mysterious. Maybe she can find out about him and get him to explain why he's the prince of the Zodiacs. And then the creepy older brother. Maybe he's got some skills I can learn or something. But really, you're just sitting there with 3 men that value you or should value you. And I'm like, this looks a lot like the harem in the other show.
It's essentially a reverse harem, but it's not as. There are some much more explicit examples of it.
That's
She's definitely,
fascinating. Why
yeah.
is it 3?
Oh, it's more. Um,
It's
And
but
more
they
than that.
warn me. Listen, Kevin, if I was gonna listen, if I was dating you, you're my girlfriend, okay, and I'm warming you up to serving more dinner, making more dinner to serve more plates of dinner at once. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to warm you up. You start with one, you meet the coolest one, and then you
well,
get a second one and a third one in there.
it's okay. So in a boy harem, and this is another positive. I really think as long as these kind of fantastic stories go, these fantasies go, there's a little bit more dynamics going on. So there are more men introduced. And in this show, some of the other zodiacs are women, for example. So it's not all men, but these other men show up, and not Yuki, Honda is still positioned as not always a sexual interest, but as a reference to a past sexual interest.
Whoa.
um like, oh, she reminds me of my ex-girlfriend who I can't be with because I belong to this zodiac family,
How
and that happens
transparent.
twice. Yeah. So um it
Listen, it's obvious that one of the girl zodiacs has to fuck Honda, because then she won't turn into a mouse or whatever.
well, the apparently the curse is, well, maybe we should move on to the big reveal of the first episode,
Oh
which
right.
is
The
the
guys can't get
men.
hugged by women because plot.
There's got to be something
Right.
to say about this, right? Yeah. So these zodiac animals, these spirit possessed humans, can't be touched by someone of the other sex, can't be embraced, can't be hugged by
Yeah,
someone of the
they can
other
kind of
sex.
touch, but they can't be hugged.
Yes. And without turning into the spirit form, which is basically an
Literal
animal.
mouse, a literal cat, a
Yes.
literal.
Um,
And then they're naked when they come back, when they pop back as a human because their clothes
and
fell off.
yes, Kevin, you wouldn't have seen that, but I want to wait on that. I want to stay on the animal aspect. Is there anything interesting you find about these men being positioned as, spirit animals, and that they're transformed after a physical embrace? I mean, it might be obvious with what we've talked about, but um,
Oh
Oh,
no.
yeah, I mean, I guess the way I sort of see that is like men are you could see it as like men are more animalistic, I guess.
Oh no,
And
cuddly animals on the inside. They have a mystery. Is he a wolf on the inside, or is he a little rat on the inside? Little cute
yeah,
mouse. Is he a cat? Right? Does he scratch you even though he loves you?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the mystery being revealed by a woman's touch.
Yeah, it's almost like your authentic self is revealed upon a physical interaction with a woman.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's a great way to put it.
one of her powers is like clear. Like she's like, there's ink in the water, but like you put one droplet of her and it clears it up. She's so perfect or something.
Yes, that's a great. Yeah, that's a good analogy to just describe her character. I would stretch this a little bit more. Let's look at it symbolically in terms of how, because remember, these men are just projections of feminine fantasy. That's the frame that we're using. And
Really?
same with the last one, right? The women, the goddesses, are just projections of masculine fantasy. Which, and on the last episode, we talked about how the women are framed as pure, godlike goddesses, right? Literally goddesses without powers. Um, they descended onto the earth, but in this, the other sex is depicted as material, right? They're spirits of the earth. And so there's a juxtaposition between
Oh
kind
yeah.
of these in classical,
Divinity.
yeah. What's that?
Like divinity versus a burden being a god.
Well, in Christianity, a useful dichotomy that Christianity uses a lot is the difference between spirit and soul. And maybe in different cultures, it might be yin and yang. I don't fucking know. It could be anything, but there's this kind of dualistic notion of spiritual things of heaven, spiritual things of earth, right? And so Christianity famously
Mm.
represses a lot of the spirituality in the earth. Like the body is not a spiritual thing. It's gross, it's material, so on and so forth. A lot of pagan religions, this is a good example, deities are directly tied to material things, crops, earth, et cetera, et cetera. With God and Christianity, it's just kind of this ubiquitous, well, he just does everything, but he's not of the earth, right? He kind of makes it, and he makes it pure, and it's not material. But here, what I think is interesting is that, and I don't know why, but the men are material. They're material divine beasts. They're animals. And I don't know the significance of that per se. But to go back, what I was thinking earlier is like there's a gesture towards embracing the ugliness of Earth, right? The material being, the drama, the trauma that's tied up with being part of the zodiac family. It's all very grounded um, in material reality, while still being kind of divine, imminent in some way.
Maybe that's because women are like more realistic, and that's why they're trying to be perfect within the patriarchal society because they're considering that route, whereas men are like, no, 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 we're gonna escape. We're done with this, right? Like it doesn't have to be realistic for men; it can be less realistic, just idealized.
Yeah, I think well, God's dead, right? So we're kind of over Christianity in a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of culture is, and we're extremely materialistic now. Um, I feel like there's an ideological shift that I agree with more or less in finding the divine, whatever that means, high value, life affirming elements in material existence, as opposed to sticking our head in the ground and saying, well, there's heaven. I'll just die. I'll get rid of this body and then I'll become a spirit, so on and so forth. And I think you see something like that in the shonen fantasies, in this kind of neglect of familial domestic realities, right? No, 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 no. I'm a perfect boy who loves purely and I get to fuck bitches. Or they want to fuck me, but I'm just, aloof and whatnot. Um, I got more to say, but if you guys have anything, I don't want to keep talking.
Guy joins a podcast, doesn't want to keep talking.
Kevin, do you have any Lacanian perspectives? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's Lacanian or not, but I think that there is something interesting about kind of maybe the fate of each of these characters. Like, her fate is to um, have this really hard life and to
Mm.
make something good of it and still care for other people, right? Like, she, in a sense, is doing all of this uh, internal labor for others, like the mental, emotional labor for other people. Um,
Yep.
and then to contrast that, Bell and the Izakai has to do all of this physical external labor in this dungeon of like
Right.
conquering these external forces and leveling up, progressing to different tiers in the dungeon. And they both have to like will themselves to do certain things and motivate themselves. Um like, she's often motivating herself like, I can't rest, I have to work hard. I remember this one cleaning scene, and then the two cleaning ladies she was working with, they were like, man, our work got a lot easier when she started working here.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? It's kind of interesting that their lives have some kind of fate around it. Like, he's supposed to do this and she's supposed to do that.
It's interesting that you say that. It's only implied in the first episode, but it's revealed that there's a prophecy of the Zodiac family where a woman will come in and cure everybody of their curse. The curse being when they touch someone of the other sex, they turn into their spirit animals. And that is, that's going to be Honda. Um, so there is a fate. There's an explicit fate in the narrative where she will heal an entire family of this, you know, a psychologically loaded curse around the other sex. It's kind of, you can't help but be like, this is where it's both appealing and it's also very, sometimes I can't stand it. Right.
It's just
Um,
defeated. Like if we were like, oh, I'm learning so much from this anime. There's so many real life parallels. They add that, and you're like, oh, so I should just go do something else. It's like, I don't. Who cares then? I guess. Like, wait, she's special because she's special, not just because she's strong.
and
Fine.
and I feel like, I would have to ask Anna, but I, because of how grounded or Honda is sometimes, in that like she's just a girl, right? She's not some dude who learns spells and goes kick ass because he loves it. Like, there's something a little more unrealistic about that where you can't really define or connect with it. But Honda does give an example of what femininity should be in a very concrete way. Like, you could try to emulate Honda a lot easier than you could Belle. At least,
Belle does nothing.
yeah. Well, Belle does nothing, and you could say, well, I'll fall in love with a girl and I'll work hard for her, and maybe I'll liberate myself from that love and learn that I'm X, Y, and Z, and I can do it without her, which is the narrative of that show, but hardly. And um, but that's still pretty abstract, right? You're emulating a broad character arc. Honda's like, she does her homework, she cleans the dishes, she cleans other people's messes, she works hard and
She's
doesn't give
of
up.
service to up to 3 men as
Yes,
soon as she
without
meets them.
question, and enjoys every second of it. Um, and if there's, I want to talk about the weird, the animal, turning back from animals. So in the second episode, Kevin, you didn't see this, but what happens is at the end of the episode, I guess we never talked about
The
Catboy.
cat guy.
Catboy, he's the Tsundere, um, which is an anime trope of the I don't like you, but they secretly like you, right? So they hide their emotions. He's a tough karate master. And I forgot to say that. At the end of the first episode, it's revealed that these two hot boys are also like kung fu masters, of
Oh,
course.
dude, the cat boy crashes through the roof of their house like he was flying and jumped in
Yeah.
and goes, I'm challenging you to the death. And I'm like, I don't get this. What the
Yeah.
fuck was this? Is this a boy anime? What's happening?
Honestly, when that happened, I was like, oh, I could get down with this. This is cool. So
Yeah,
it
but
worked
then
on me.
they don't do a lot of fighting because it's more about the boys are always in conflict and it's unrelatable or something.
Yeah, and that occurs throughout. There isn't a lot of fighting, but it is referenced that everyone's a kung fu master for some reason. So you can't just be. There's still a little bit of that masculine fantasy going on, right? You could be sensitive, whatever, emotionally immature, but you
Or
also gotta
maybe it's
kick
like
ass.
the
Gotta like.
female's view of the masculine fantasy, which is why it's not gone into too much, is because they don't experience it; they just see it.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. Um, it's like at a glance, or it's in the peripheral. Um, but yeah, so this episode ends. The first episode ends with the first episode ends with the two characters. This fight between the two hot boys. Aaron, you're breathing into your mic a bit.
Oh,
And uh, Honda is there, and she's like, oh no, and she breaks up the fight by hugging the cat boy, which is their first interaction, right? And then somehow she manages to hug all of them, and they all turn into animals, and that's kind of the cliffhanger. It's like, well, this is the show. Look at this twist. So it turns into a rat, a cat, and a dog. Um, and then the next episode starts, and the hook for that episode is that they turn back to human, but they're all naked. Um,
it's like no one could have helped it. This is how it works. She
right.
was embarrassed and went, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." Right? But then, ooh, oh, and that's like the gentle way that like women can be perverts. It's like
Well,
if it's thrust upon them and they accidentally saw a dick.
yeah, sort of, and that's what I was thinking too. It's accidental. She didn't want it, but it's still fan service. A woman wrote this, and these aren't all poised as sexy boys, but it's the way. So there's some like weird. There's a symbolic chain of events in my eyes. Boys interact with physical touch. They get turned into their true selves, which is animalistic but non-sexual. Then they turn back to their selves, and now they're sexualized. So there's some kind of dynamic where they're moved through, embrace, and then sexuality appears accidentally, right? At a
And only
glance,
with
and it's an
her,
embarrassing matter. Uh,
only in private, hopefully only with her. It's to be hidden. That's their true self, right? And that's like the crying in bed, even though you think that they're supposed to be banging. And then, and only then, their public face comes back, and that's the part the woman wants to have sex with. That's
oh yeah,
they only want to
or,
have sex with the man because he's wanted by other women. Like he's seeable, right? It's the external part that's the attractive sexually part. Whereas like in the in the isekai, right? The little sister trope is like she's just got bolted on big tits and an ass, right? Like those are just extras. She's also acting very inner self on the outside of herself. You know what I mean? Like in public with this man, she's like, I love you. You, I'm staring at you, right? Like it's very noticeable.
yeah, that's a good point. There's a way in which sexuality has like a totally different position in these fantasies. It's either all up front or it's all backloaded, right? Um,
You're right. It's so weird.
oh, Billy. Oh, yeah. Anna, do
Hey,
you have any
Billy.
comments on Fruits Basket that you want to weigh in really quick?
We welcome
Yeah,
it.
anything,
We welcome the resident expert.
anything that comes to mind?
The romantic with Yuki where he puts his hand on her
Oh, that's a
and she
good.
leans over and
Yes.
she's like, oh no.
Okay, and you did too.
And he's also a pretty boy.
Yes, we've talked about that.
Oh, you guys.
We have pretty boy, rough boy. So Anna likes these scenes, and she doesn't. She does. She does. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
her we're enjoying
I
it.
get her
yeah.
reaction saying I don't tells me all I need to know that she really does.
Yes. So there are these scenes where it's. I will say, like these boys, the soft boy, he does like.
Oh, but this is also not in the first episode. But remember,
You
they're
can
at the
come. Come here.
they're at the
Just
hot spring. No, it's okay. They're
okay.
at the hot spring, and he gives her a hair bow. It's a small gift, and then he like takes her hair or her hand and he like sniffs it or
While
something
they're
like
in the
that.
hot
They're on
spring,
the bridge and it's all romantic.
Yeah.
You remember that?
he
Yeah,
gives her
I
a
do.
hair
See,
bone
she's
delicately
telling me these
touches her
things.
hair.
She just likes these moments. There are moments where these boys make aggressive. Usually Yuki, the cat boy doesn't do that much. Like the leaf, you said you look really sick. Here's a leaf, which is like you said, like kind of a weird thing. But he'll do these weirdly aggressive moments, sexually loaded moments, where he'll lean over and put his hand on the wall. You know, she's like pinned up against the wall, and
Oh,
he like
really?
puts his hand, and he's like, "Sexy, sultry comment," and then Anna fucking dies at those moments. Like she loves those
And
moments.
maybe it's because the tension's been built up so much. And then there's this no, no, no. I've got red. Anna's got red cross hatching on her cheeks right now. Okay,
Oh, hey, Jock.
it's for real. Interesting. Yeah, she's the perfect one to interview for this. So on our next anime, we gotta convince her.
Yeah, she should come on. Anna, would you want to come on for the next anime?
Yes, I would love to.
Oh, she would love to.
But
She can choose it.
Yeah, but it also what anime? That'd be fun.
Yeah, you can choose it, and we can talk about it if you want.
Hey, hold on. There's 3 men right here, and she's about to choose the anime we're
Right,
asking her to.
she
Oh
becomes the
my
hot guy.
god, we
Yep.
just became a shoujo.
Anna, you realize if you come on the podcast, you're 3 men with 1 girl. We're turning into a shoujo
Oh yeah.
anime.
It's
Yeah, that'd
awesome.
be cool. Is there? I that's all my notes.
Oh my god, Billy, what are you doing?
Billy's
That
Billy's
sums up the
crawling all over.
Snapchats I get too. Billy, why are you doing this? The cat's hilarious, man.
He's a beautiful boy. Yeah.
He's a malleable boy. It's like he gets new personalities all the time.
Did you guys have any other thoughts or anything? I felt like I talked a lot this episode. I was really,
No,
I've
this is
watched a lot
chill.
of this recently, so I had a lot of
Oh, did you talk about how she does everything, but she's never upset?
yeah. I don't know if you heard that, but I was wondering if we talked about her domestic perfection.
We did a
Maybe
little
we-
bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like by calling her the goddess of the domestic, I sort of just assume we mean that she's kind of perfect at it. It is her domain of mastery.
I didn't even think of that. Like, I come in here going, okay, I got like 3-4 points. And then I hear from you guys and I go, oh, I'm learning about the whole thing. And that, like, as if I'm listening to the podcast. And then I have more ideas.
Yeah, I wonder, not to get like too into the weeds about gender roles and all of that, but there's this philosopher I really like named Jenkins, and she writes a lot about like trans philosophy. Because there's a big debate. Like it's a meme right now that Matt Walsh is like, "What is a woman?" and no one can like really answer in a straight way, except for like those people who are like an adult human female. Next, and Matt Walsh seems to be saying that like if you can't define it in that simple way, you're wrong. Basically, is kind of his argument, or you're ridiculous and therefore wrong. But it's a lot more complicated than that.
Ridiculous and therefore wrong. You
it's
said
it's a
ridiculous.
it's so ridiculous, therefore you're wrong. It's way more complicated in that in people who are like really trying to figure it out and find
Yeah, like defining if you have a uterus, you're a woman. No, that doesn't make sense.
yeah
If you can have a baby, you're a woman. No, it doesn't make sense
yeah
because
exactly
women can't
it's
have babies. And then it's this Mensa test, all
right,
blobs
yeah,
of blib.
we
Some
can't
blibs are
have
not
like a
born.
necessary and sufficient condition kind of definition.
Right.
And so what's the best approach? I really like Jenkins' approach because first of all, Jenkins does accept that like sex is a real thing in reality, that there's male and female. And then second of all, she says there's 2 other things that sex interacts with. One
Yeah.
is gender as a class. There's
Okay.
classes of people where it's like a social view of people's roles and in society. And there can be many different types of classes, but she thinks that there's like gender classes. And then there's a third element, which I'm sure you've all heard, which is, gender identity. Most people in this world think that there's either just sex and nothing else, or there's sex and gender identity. But Jenkins has
Right.
this third part, which I think is really interesting. And then I'm getting to the point ultimately here, which is she has this view called the norm relevance view. And really, for her, she's saying what makes someone a man or a woman is what norms they accept as those that are really important to them, those that matter to them. And um, the norms that matter to Honda, for example, like it matters to her that she's not a burden on other people, that she's not causing more pain in other people's lives. Like she doesn't want to cause Yuki pain in the social interactions in the school. She doesn't want to cause her grandpa pain because she's living with him. She doesn't want to cause her friends any pain because she doesn't want to stay over at their houses for too long because they couldn't
Not even
handle it.
pain. It's like she doesn't want to be like you're walking and she's physically in your way. Like it's as
Right.
small
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the norm that matters to her is really caring about other people to the point of living in a fucking tent, you know? Like
She won't
that
let
is
other
just
people care about her as much as she cares about them. Like,
right. Yeah. And then, to contrast with Belle, the norms that matter for Belle are, um, you know, to keep persisting despite being scared, to keep persisting despite being weak.
mm, to
Um,
work despite being unmotivated.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so those norms that they take on for themselves, those norms that matter, um, are sort of like the extreme norms that seem to matter for the masculine and feminine in Japanese society, I'm assuming, but also they relate to some norms that kind of matter in our society too. Like I think it's also in North America that women are seen as like the caregivers of the home. They are those that nourish children in the
And that's
family
gender
place.
class, right? That's like
Yeah,
from the outside in gender.
yeah, yeah. And the man is supposed to like keep working hard at work. Like that's the norm that should matter for him. Working hard, lifting the heaviest weight, all of this stuff about PRs and things. And we can talk about, if those are good and bad norms to take on or not. But I'm just describing kind of norms that I think people have. You know, this sort of reminds me of something funny that I got in an argument with my brother over Thanksgiving dinner. And we were talking about Andrew Tate. My
Okay.
brother said, Andrew Tate has some good things that he says, and a lot of people think he's a misogynist because they misinterpret what he says and because he made his money off of like a porn website. And I was like, hold on a second, my little brother. I'm not going to say his name. And I said, Andrew Tate says that the only thing that makes a woman valuable is her beauty. That right there is misogyny, in my opinion. Like, if
Yeah.
you say that her personality doesn't give her value or her beliefs or
I- I-
what she brings to
She's
the world,
right. Yeah. She's
yeah,
anything less than a normal human being, right? How you should gauge anyone. Then,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And my little brother tried to push back. He was like, "Yeah, he's saying that in a context of like blah blah blah," and I was like, "Yeah, I mean that. Thanks for conceding my point. That's you're just agreeing that
No, but I
that Andrew
relate
Tate."
to it. Kevin, no, I relate to it a little bit though. Don't you? No. No, I don't. I think you're pent up, friend.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing that's kind of interesting is that idea gets traction.
I
Um,
know. Isn't that bizarre?
No, no, no.
yeah,
When I listen to it, some of what he says, okay, when he's on a podcast and he's been controversial, he's very careful to only do the points that are the best in that double regard, in that double entendre regard. where they sound kind of misogynistic, or the third thing he says is kind of misogynistic, but the first two are like the plight of the male, right? Like real frustrations men have. But
Yeah.
I've seen his clips before he was popular, and one of his things that he will not relinquish is that if he makes all the money in the house, you as the woman should make him 2 cups of coffee in the morning, even if he never drinks the second one. And he doesn't give that up. He really keeps going on that because it's not that hard. That's what he says. But yet he would explode if someone required anything of him because he can pay his way out of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
he can say that men start with no worth because you got to work for some people to give a shit about you or do something, and women can just be beautiful. But then he branches off into implications of such a thing, and it's the same thing as a salesman or a yes man, or he gets you on the yes ladder. You go, okay, sure, you're right. Women should bring me 2 cups of coffee because I'm the breadwinner. What? You can just request insane things?
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, I take it your brother didn't back down, or was he like, I'll think about it?
He bought it. He gave him.
I think he just sort
He
of
gave him his
stopped.
login for Hustlers University. It's like just do 5 courses. Do 5 hours of courses, and you'll see.
I do think it's because I watched a little bit of it because a little bit ago I was interested in comparing the Andrew Tate culture esque type with 16th century courtiers who, and they both have a lot of similar opinions about women, unsurprisingly, and how the courtiers ended up writing their misogyny in poetry, whereas Andrew Tate just like says misogyny. So there's a weird point for the 16th century misogynist. Um, Maybe it depends if you like poetry or not. But I was doing a little research on Tate, in that like I was just listening to his interviews, and I really only listened to one with Piers Morgan, who's a tool in his own right.
Yeah. I heard. I saw that. That was. I mean, sorry to
That was
interrupt you,
bizarre.
but I
Yeah.
thought Piers like definitely was just pulling rhetorical moves to make Andrew Tate look bad. And what sucks about that is like Andrew Tate then has a point when he
Yeah.
calls Piers Morgan out about it.
Well, it was a mix, right? So I watched it, and he would do the main thing I noticed is Piers, once he couldn't get an answer out of Tate, frankly, because he wasn't asking the right questions. Um, now, I don't know if I'd be any better, but he would let points go or bring or tackle them, and I thought the wrong way. And then when he couldn't get something out of Tate, he would just switch to another inflammatory statement, and that seems really rhetorically like biased. It's like, okay, so you don't agree that women are objects and they're sovereign individuals still. Well, how about this time when you said beating women is fine? And it's kind of like, okay, well, that's going to come off poorly to the audience. But moreover, I noticed this. I think you said it earlier, and this is what I noticed is with Andrew Tate, this argument that like you have to understand it in context. And that's what Tate would say. He's like, you have to take my arguments in the context of a 2 hour long podcast. It's like you don't need 2 hours to justify that. You would need a lot more to justify saying some of the shit that you say. It just doesn't actually compute on any level. Not really. You have to be very specific about justifying some of the terms he uses. And so the main one I noticed was women are a property of men after they get married. It was something like that. And it was based off the idea that women are handed off symbolically, at least in my estimation, during a wedding by their father. And then once they do that, they belong to Andrew Tate or whatever. And he kept using the word property. And Pierce was like, well, that's the wrong word. You're not using the right word. And he's like, no, you don't understand. It just means something different. And I'm like, well, then and that people buy that. And it's like, well, you're using the wrong word. It's like, you're a stupid bitch. You can't say that. I don't mean
That's his
that you're a
whole way
stupid or a
of getting
bitch. You're
like.
not understanding the context, right? And people really bought that. And I don't know. It's bizarre to me. And what's the fantasy there? I guess it's the classic, like, Aaron, you said it pretty well, right? The misunderstood male who struggles in some ways. And so, therefore, once the struggle is the struggle is brought up, men have no value, whatever, have to work for it. Then anything that comes after is weirdly accepted. It's kind of like when you lie and you give a half truth to support the lie.
Yeah.
You know, I was late for the train, but I left 30 minutes late anyway. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, sorry, the train didn't show up or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know why a bunch of people
I think,
jump on that
yeah,
train.
I think Aaron put it really well, which is, he's got, say he's got 3 points, he's got two that are really easy to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And then he makes kind of this jump to a radical position. But
It could be a punchline too.
yeah,
It sounds like a punchline sometimes because it's 1, 2, 3, and he laughs it off, but he slipped it in.
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. He's definitely kind of this online guru figure.
Phenomena.
He was just a meme before that, man. He was on
Yeah.
like the podcasts I like were making fun of his videos because he was just being ridiculous and it looked like he was on a green screen even though it's his actual house. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty
Everything's
bad.
like gold records on everything. Gold
And didn't he
records
have a
on his
fedora at one point? Like, wasn't he rocking a fedora for a few years?
I didn't see that one.
I think he's like a really. I don't even know how other men look up to him, just on a physical level. I think he's got like a weak jawline. He's got little like if I had to be
Uh
like a
he's got a
uber
snake
masculine dick,
tattoo. He's got
huh?
his head he's got a snake tattoo, his head shaves. He's kind of in shape. He's not unattainably in shape.
Oh,
He's
interesting.
just tanned. His money is unattainable, but he tells you you can attain it if you
Work
fucking
hard.
take his course.
If you own a
After he
casino,
convinces you to work hard, literally a fucking Romanian casino, and you're in bed with gangsters,
yeah.
um, literally, um, and that you can get tons of women, right? And that women shouldn't have tons of men. That you should have tons of women, and they shouldn't also go fuck other dudes. But it's all about like vapid women or something. It's like this idea that his life is everyone's life, right? Like if you take all of his statements in context of his life, sure, you are the top G in your life. These women who are coming you are coming to you because of your money. So yes, they can make you a second cup of coffee. I'm sure they've done a lot more gross things to your butthole for because you like have so much money. You know what I mean? Like he's got a $5 million Bugatti Veyron. Like he's got too
Jesus.
much money.
Yeah.
So people see that and go, "Holy fuck, are you serious?"
I well, yeah, and I guess when I'm thinking about Fruits Basket and is it wrong to pick up girls in the dungeon, um, and these kind of living fantasies of men, like Tate is a living fantasy, and like lives that, like positions himself as that, like publicly. Of course, he isn't. He can't be. But it's this, and you see it in other characters. What I'm about to describe, like in the new God of War game, um, Kratos. There's the uber stoicism. That's the main cell. That's the masculine fantasy in one way or another. Is this
Yeah.
like you're material in a way, and you're an unfeeling material being. There's no subtlety. There's no acknowledgement of other people's feelings. Right? Facts don't care about your feelings. These are all kind of adjacent associations to It's all logic. He's just speaking facts. Uh, the whole arc of Kratos is learning how to be more emotional. Right? And with Honda, right? I mean, there's some kind of symmetry with actual fantasies going on in that, like, I don't know of any, I don't know of any huge feminine figures like Tate, right? Is there a
Whoa.
corresponding symmetry? Is there anyone like that, or is it just
I think that's
little
a thing.
bubbles of
Oh my
Instagram?
god, are you ready? It's Kim Kardashian.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that makes
But she
sense.
doesn't give advice, you know what I mean? There's no woman giving advice on how to get men because it's all just advice on how to get hotter because getting hotter gets men. It's all
It's
this
quiet.
adjacent like do this, but it's not to get men, right? It's like as far as it would ever go is like Cosmo magazine cover slogans like um, 10 tips for better sex. It's not how to make your girl squirt. You know what I mean? Like,
Sometimes, um, yeah, I don't know. That's
like
that's a good point. But maybe to go back with Honda again is like she her domain is the unseen. It's in the feelings. It's in the interior lives of these men. It's in taking care of their home, right? Whereas these men are the kung fu fighting spirits, and likewise with Tate, he's out here as a huge public figure, forming the world to his will in some way or another, which is kind of the whole shtick.
Literally a kung fu fighting spirit.
Yes. So yeah, something there. Men don't dwell on the subtleties, I guess. That would be the
Men don't dwell on the subtleties, but if you don't bring me 2 cups of coffee, I'll fuck you up.
right.
I don't dwell on the subtleties, but that 4K I gave you for a Gucci bag? Yeah, that made me mad even though I have a $5 million car among my 20 other cars.
Yeah,
Dude,
and I wonder if like there's just um like a different way that relationships kind of work at that level of wealth, because that sort of seems to be a
I
theme
think
I've
you're right.
noticed. Like take for example Trump and his wife Melania. Someone asked him or asked Melania, "Would you be with Trump if he didn't have as much money as he does?" And then Melania responded, "Would he be with me if I wasn't this beautiful?" Like
Oh,
they just kind of accept yes,
GG.
this is
yeah.
exactly why
Wow.
we're with each other.
Wow.
This is LA, dude. This is the people get BBLs because that's gonna help them finish their life plan better, right? You're gonna get
BBLs.
a Brazilian butt lift, and
Okay.
it's now abbreviated BBL because it's so popular. Like,
Yeah.
girls will think, "What should I get done? What's like, what hard work do I need to do next? In what do I modify about myself that's imperfect?" But it's the same thing as the isekai, where the Bell, the guy, he doesn't know what to work on. He doesn't really want to work on anything inherently. He's just like, what's valuable? Oh, strength. Okay, I'll go get that. Right? These girls are like, what's
Yeah.
valuable? Oh,
A lot
that.
of yeah, a
I'll
lot
go
of
get that.
at a certain level, and we feel this, but maybe on those big time relationships, big time meaning famous, that your life is so it's constructed by, say, whatever society wants of you, to the degree that even your interior lives need to correspond with that
Ugh,
reality to some degree.
that's my worst fear. That is so scary when you said that, dude. Oh my god.
Well, that's to some degree we already do that, right? They're not all unhealthy, but um, I have noticed like celebrities, they only marry each other, which I always find kind of weird. Like movie stars, they tend to just date other actors. And so there's Kevin, like you were saying, which I always thought was interesting about that philosopher, was the gender as a class construct, specifically, like there are ideas of gender that correspond directly with class, which makes a lot of sense. Um, there's probably a certain section of class relationships that have a whole different spectrum of expectations,
I've
that are
read a
like,
lot.
huh?
Where it's almost impossible to know if someone likes you as a friend or a spouse if because of your fame or money. Once you have it, it's
Uh,
untestable. You can't test that because someone can just lie, and you can't test it.
well, I think that's always going to be. Yeah, I wonder. I'm suspect of that just because it's like, well, if you go through enough in a relationship, you're going to get by that stuff. It will always be a plus side in the same sense that, well, Kevin can play
Yeah,
violin, like, let's just say he's good with his fingers, like, and he has a job. That's a cool combo. Um, like, I would see that to some degree is the same as having a wealth, right? It's just a plus, but eventually a relationship is going to get past that, whether you like it or not, right? You're going to have the fruit basket experience of healing trauma and whatnot,
yeah. That's probably why it ends up like ramping
crashing
up
and
the same
burning.
amount. Yeah, but crashing and burning at the same rate as normal relationships, where people
Yeah.
get in for too long, anyways, for some random reason. It's usually sex, right? Like people who don't have money are just like, oh, we'll find something else to use from each other.
Yeah. I wonder how many, yeah, I mean, who knows, but I do wonder like how many people of these huge levels buy into just the
Sugar baby
fantasy images of
situation.
themselves, right? Oh, we're
Mm.
both actors. This is our reality. And I don't know where
I'm
I was going with
sure.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure. So this sort of reminds me of that story Aaron told at the very beginning about apples. Like he spills the apples everywhere, and he just left them on the bus. He just walked out, right? Like, so there's no real concern about the loss of the apples, which shows a certain amount of wealth, right? Like not having to make sure he uses every single resource of food he has. And then there's also like this idea about his time, like I don't have time to pick these up. My time is more valuable. I'm going to do what I want.
Also, the bus is gonna leave,
The bus
right?
is going
So
to
like
leave. Yeah.
you would have to inconveniently get off at another stop.
Yeah, exactly. Or like hold the bus up and everyone gets mad at you. Yeah.
Here's an apple.
I
Yeah.
would leave. Actually, I
It's
don't
a,
know. I'd probably freeze up.
I think
yeah,
it's
but
just
there's
so
like, there's,
funny to step off. That's like a really good punchline to myself.
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's too easy to do it.
Yeah, it's a little bit like I mean, in that sense it sort of shows the freedom, because we're talking about like Tate and Trump and how they're all actors and maybe they know it a little bit, but they still play that role. But the friend with the apples on the bus, like there are some roles that maybe he should have played. Like maybe he should have cleaned up the mess that he did. Maybe he should have gotten off at the next stop. Whatever. Maybe he should have tried to pick up all the apples to use them, wash them, or give them away personally or whatever. But he had the freedom to be like, "Nah, this shit's fake. Bye," and then get off the bus.
It reminds me of and I'm sure there's others analogies to other systems of thought or whatever, but like that freedom requires a certain amount of anonymity or a certain amount of wealth that's not too much, so you're not constricted by being a celebrity. It reminds me of like Buddhism's karmic wheel, right? There's like a god realm, there's a titan realm. Those are dope places to be. But you can't actually get in, like there's enlightened there, which is to say you can't be free, right? You're stuck in the cycle of samsara. And then there's all the hell realms, which suck dick. They just suck. And then there's one, it's the human realm, which is, kind of shitty and kind of not. And that's where you kind of want to be, right? Um,
You're right. That makes sense. The celebrities are too far in that one direction, and that's why we're so interested in them psychologically.
right. You want to be able to leave the bus without the apples, without, I don't know, someone taking a
Trump
video of
wouldn't have
you and
had to
being
be
like,
like,
DJ
hey,
Khaled left these
yeah.
apples on the bus. Look at this, right? You can't get away with it. You're just some dude. You didn't even have to buy into the social game at that level. You could just piss people off and people would shrug it off. That is definitely freedom. I would have I would have pussied out and stayed like a stop later and like picked up the
I'm
fucking
sorry,
apples,
guys.
gotten off, walk, whatever I had to
How are you
do.
gonna carry the apples? The bag broke. Were you gonna put them in your
I would
pockets?
figure it out. I like tie it up, and I'd be looking at
You
these
got a
dirty,
shirt?
shitty apples, and be like, "I'm gonna throw these
Yeah.
away when I get home. I can't
You
even
got
rinse
no
them
shirt.
off."
You
Yeah,
got a shirt filled with apples, all tied up. Dirty apples. Apples in your pockets. Carrying apples. Dropping apples.
bring them home, out of shame.
Yeah, dude. You're Honda, dude.
I am Honda.
You're a shojo little girl.
you're a little shojo. You're a little girl from a shojo,
Little
aren't you?
shojo girl, aren't you?
So
Little
I need
shojo
to
girl.
I need to
Hop
head
off.
out, but maybe we could talk about the next podcast we'll do.
Yeah, I'm down for whatever. I think we had a couple ideas, Kevin. You've brought in a few. Right? Weren't we
I
going to
honestly,
do something with Andrew?
Andrew
Whatever his
Tate,
name is.
Andrew
It was
Tate
either
cast.
Andrew or was the guy who did the. I thought his name was Andrew, but he does the whole like, what is a woman thing.
Oh, Matt Walsh. Yeah, we could do a Matt Walsh. Like watch that documentary and then give our responses.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah,
And we gotta
I've
get
chosen the last like
anime.
two. So
And I chose the first one. So Aaron, do you want to pick one?
I choose what Anna says. Because JAK podcast, technically, I could sit out and she could be there, and it would still be all of them.
That's true.
I'm
Yeah.
for that, but it's really up to you guys. I've had my way. I've had my fantasy.
With two men. Oh no. Are we in? What are we in? This is too meta, man. All right, let's end it on a story. My grandma. So I really didn't understand that people didn't want to be a burden. You know what I mean? I really don't get that. I just don't understand. Um, my grandma, years ago, I get a message from her, right? Like I was with my girlfriend, we're hanging out. 2 hours later, I get a message. I listen to it. Aaron, my eye, it went blind. I think I had a stroke. I go, okay, Noni, holy fuck. I call her back, right? Because she shouldn't answer. She should be at the hospital by now. It's been hours.
Right.
She answers her phone. First ring. Hey, Noni. Oh, hey, Aaron. How's it going? What the fuck? You fucking, are you alive? What is happening? Are you blind? What is going on? And like her word was slurred a little bit. So I was like, hey, what the fuck? Did you just have a stroke? She goes, yeah, I think so. My eye just went blind. My left eye just stopped working while I was watching TV. I go, and so how are you? When's the, was the ambulance? How are you? Are you back already? She goes, no, I didn't go yet. I was waiting for you.
Oh
You
my
waiting for
god.
me? Yeah, you got to drive here. I go, can you go to the hospital right now before I get there too also? And then I'll just meet you there? Like, call 911, you fucking psychopath. She goes, no, 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 I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't, I'll take a cab. And I go, you'll take a cab. She goes, yeah, I'll take a cab. Okay, fine, I'll do it. I go, okay, please take a cab. She goes, can you call it for me? I go, hang up the phone and call the cab right now. What else are you doing? What is going on? And she goes, I gotta wash my feet. I don't want the doctors to think I'm dirty. I won't call the cab because she's from Italy and like the doctor's like the big shaman of the village. You know what I mean? Like he's the high status. You can't talk to him like that, Aaron. Oh my god, don't don't question him. He's the doctor. One time she goes, oh my god, you talk to him like that? And I thought she meant like I was giving him shit or something. I just asked him like, what's the plan, what's going on, and what happened, right?
Yeah.
It's just not doctor speak, but like competent medical speak.
That's kind
And
of
she
sweet.
was like so impressed. And this is the same lady who was like, just go to Safeway and ask them. And I go, ask them what? She goes, ask the people who work there about the product. And I go, they're not going to know about this product, Noni. They're teenagers. She goes, no, they're supposed to.
Yeah.
I go, the
Interesting.
pharmacy's closed. They don't know about the medicine, the normal employees. She just thinks that, like, in that position of authority, those people have that stuff. And that it's like she didn't want to she doesn't want to burden the ambulance to come and get her. She doesn't want to go and like the doctor to see her dirty feet. Like that's a burden. The doctor who's going to save her life from a stroke or whatever can't see her dirty feet. Like that is so fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's it's really weird. I guess it's kind
It's
of
not even
sweet in a way.
crazy. It's not crazy. It's so like caring and shit, but just to a toxic to yourself point.
Right. Yeah. It buys into the reality of like social standing way too much. Whole different world.
So much.
Uh, uh. Is she okay? Is she dead now?
Yeah, yeah, not from that though.
Oh, okay, good. Well,
She
I mean,
survived a really shitty career.
good that she didn't die from that.
No, no, this doctor was dope, dude. He one of her doctors after she got her hip replacement, he was dancing with her and speaking
Oh,
Italian to her and shit.
oh,
Like
that's beautiful.
there's some good dudes.
All
That's
right, well,
cool.
that's a good place to end. I think. Thanks for listening to the Jackpot. I was
Thanks for
Thanks,
fine.
listening
Jag.
to the Hawk Padcast.
Welcome to the Hack Podcast. This
Okay.
is the end of the Egg Podcast.